Hey, what's up? This is Chosen. Hope you're having a fantastic day. This is going to be a Raid Shadow Legends video going over the most underrated legendary in each faction. Now, I did a video a little bit ago talking about the best legendary in each faction, and I actually had a comment and some requests talking about maybe do the opposite. Maybe do the most underrated legendary in each faction, the one that maybe might be worth booking and worth building up that a lot of players don't talk about, that maybe has a little bit more usage than the community sees on the surface level. So yeah, I thought, why not? Let's go through. Let's have a discussion about the most underrated legendary in each faction, in my opinion. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so we'll just kind of go through and have a casual, long-form kind of discussion here about my opinions on the most underrated in each faction. So for the Banner Lords, they've got a lot of champions here in the Banner Lords, and they've got a lot of really good legendaries, a lot of ones that people already know about. Rhonda and Marichka, obviously, Terras, Baron being buffed, the new live arena champion, Quintus, so lots of good options here. I could almost go with Sigmund, but I feel like there is a pretty decent amount of people that think Sigmund is pretty good. So, you know, Raglan, decent candidate for underrated because she has one of the best revives in the game here on the A3, a 2-turn with full turn meter. So an insanely annoying revive if you're ever looking for a good like stall champion in live arena or something. But you know what? I gotta go with my first. Lord Champhor was the first legendary I ever invested in and 6-starred and booked in Raid Shadow Legends way back in 2019. And honestly, he ended up being a better progression champion than I even thought he would be. You get the aura is massive. It might be the biggest aura in the game. 50% HP. Now, if you've got a champion with, you know, 20,000 HP, you're getting 10,000 HP across the board. So insane aura there for dungeon progression. And he also has a super reliable 3-turn cooldown of accuracy down and attack down. So not only does he give you a bunch of HP, but he helps the tankiness of your whole team. And yeah, I ended up getting a lot of value out of Lord Champhor, and he was able to help me progress. He also breaks the defense of all those boss fights and stuff when you're trying to progress through the dragon and stuff. So yeah, I do think Lord Champhor is definitely a little bit underrated. Okay, then for the High Elves, this is an obvious choice for the most underrated. We are going to be going with Pixneal. I'm kidding. We're not going with Pixneal. I can already see you raging in the comment section. Okay, we're not going with Pixneal. But, you know, there's a couple decent options here. I feel like the High Elves have a few that are a little bit underrated. Bellinor is a monster in the clan boss if you get him in good gear. So he can definitely be like that Draco Morph DPS role in an unkillable comp where he's never going to hit weak or anything. He's a void. But you know what? I would probably go with Lonathero. The A1 is kind of similar to like a Duchess A1 where you're going to constantly place that shield on an ally with low HP. So super good there. He scales the HP. He's got pretty solid base stats. And then he's also got a massive shield here. The shield on all allies for 3 turns, not just 2, 20% of the champion's HP. So that can easily be like a 20,000 shield on your whole team. And he also fills a cool role in the game of increasing that crit damage and then allowing allies to team up to target a single enemy. Now, in situations like you're trying to take down a Bommel or something with some of those Nishok speedruns, Lonathero can be a super great option for a situation like that. And yeah, I think he's not necessarily, you know, some top 20 Lego in the game, but I do think he's not as trash as people think he is. And, you know, I'm actually a little bit guilty of falling into that trap. I didn't even go for the DM Fusion. You can see I don't have him. I just kind of like was like, and I let it go. Now, admittedly, I don't really need him. I don't think, you know, with an account like mine, he would have been game changing. But I do think, you know, even me was guilty of underrating him a little bit. So I think he would be a decent candidate for a discussion like this. And then for the Sacred Order. Now, I think this one is going to be a champion you're going to start seeing a lot more of once you start getting more into the live arena, and that is Errol. I am seeing more and more people pull this guy out of the arsenal because he can absolutely wreck in PvP. If you've got him in good gear in a solid team, he can snowball. He's going to remove all debuffs and then steal all buffs before attacking. And if he's coming after a damage dealer, they probably won't have a lot of resistance or anything like that. Plus, you can build him with 70% crit rate, and he's going to absolutely smack them and then get an extra turn if he gets a kill and just continue to snowball and pop off. So yeah, Errol is definitely getting some love, and it's really cool to have nukers that you can build with 70% crit rate, because it means they can get even more crit damage and they can scale even harder. Plus, we're seeing a rise of value in champions that can inherently ignore defense. And you can see he gets that here on his AoE. Not only the extra chance to crit, but just the base 15% defense ignore. So yeah, Errol is going to start getting more and more love, and when you start going up against people in the live arena, you will probably see a decent amount of Errol, or at least more than you thought you would. Then for the Barbarians, I feel like the Barbarians are pretty accurately rated. It's really tough to find one that's underrated here. I would probably go with Contra. I think a lot of people don't understand how great Contra can be, especially ever since the Hydra got released. She's got an absolutely ridiculous ability here, hitting all enemies 3 times and placing so many different debuffs on enemies. That is an insane ability for a place like the Hydra or in your Faction Wars teams. She's also amazing in Faction Wars teams because she can steal the random buff here on the A1, which I think the Barbarians have to deal with like some annoying champion like Maneater or something that goes unkillable. She can remove that and literally speed up your Faction Wars runs by like a minute just because of the ability to remove those buffs. So absolutely incredible. She's also tanky, scales with defense, has an amazing base defense, and can just do a lot of really cool things. So I think most people in the community by now understand that Contra is pretty decent, but I still, in the context of the Barbarians, would put her as maybe the most underrated one. But worth mentioning, similar to how we talked about Errol, you're going to start to see Turvald in a lot of your live arena matches as well, because this guy can buff himself and just absolutely demolish people in the context of the live arena. So you'll start seeing him as like the second choice of people's DPS, where they come with like a Rotos plus a Turvald or something, and you have to kind of pick your poison. So similar to Errol, you will start seeing a lot of him when you're going up against live opponents. The next is going to be the Ogryn Tribes. Now, the Ogryn Tribes definitely need some love. They've got the least legendaries in the game, besides the Sylvan Watchers, the brand new faction. But it would be nice to see like the next fusion, next fragment, next whatever be in addition to the Ogryn Tribes. The next Void Lego, they only have one Void Lego, and it's I believe Gergo is a legacy Void Lego who was in the game at the release. So they literally have never gotten a Void Lego, and they have the least Legos. So I would like to personally see the next Void Lego be an Ogryn Tribe and be a pretty solid one, because honestly, they don't have very many legendaries, and their legendary roster is a little bit underwhelming on top of that. A lot of like really niche champions that are kind of underwhelming in general. But I do think Korrigar would be, I don't think people in the community are quite on to how solid this guy is. You can build him as an absolute unit. He doesn't need any accuracy. He's got a base resistance of 50. He scales with HP. He is going to be healing every time he takes a turn with self-sustain, and he's an ally protector that can keep himself alive. And also, he's going to do AoE turn meter fill of 30%, which is pretty big, and an AoE cleanse. So I think Korrigar is actually pretty solid. Not like god tier meta or anything, but in terms of the context of the Ogryn Tribes, I'd probably give it to Korrigar. Next up, Lizardmen. Lizardmen is really tough. I feel like these are all pretty accurately perceived in the community, and like none of them are standing out to me. I feel like people know how amazing Necmo and Krisk are, and they know how generally useful Pytheon is, and you know, the polymorph absolutely demolished Ramantu's value within the game. I guess I'd have to go with Shogger. I mean, the guy can be super useful in Sand Devil's Necropolis because he fills a really cool role in the game by having this super reliable sleep on the A1. And he can actually hit pretty hard and do some pretty cool things and cranking out DPS in lots of different areas of the game. So Lizardman might be the toughest one for me to do, but I guess I would probably go with Shogger. For Skinwalkers, again, this one's tough. I feel like these are mostly accurately perceived. You know what? I might honestly go with Mighty Uko. Now, Mighty Uko is just ridiculous. Now, up at the very top tiers of like the live arena and stuff, you're going to be facing a lot of huge blessing polymorph type stuff. So you'll see less and less of Mighty Uko the higher you go. But for us normal players, for people on planet Earth where you're not facing 6-star blessings every single game, Mighty Uko is really, really good. You get the speed up, the revive, the AoE buff strip, and not only that, but the accuracy down and the block buffs are like absolutely ridiculous. And if your leader gets banned, you've got your ally speed in all battles of 20%. So you got a good PvE champion, amazing in Faction Wars, amazing for progression, extremely viable in PvP in places like the live arena. I end up using Mighty Uko a lot in my live arena fights. So I think most people think Mighty Uko is a good champion, but I think even that is undersold, and I think people are going to warm up to using Mighty Uko in most of the tiers in the live arena. And we're about halfway done. We're moving on into the orcs. Now, this is going to be a hot take. Everyone's going to yell at me and freak out, but I seriously think the most underrated is Raka. Like, maybe I'm crazy, okay? I'm willing to admit that. I might be crazy. It's a Saturday right now. It's the weekend. I didn't sleep very well last night. Maybe I'm just completely off the rails. But I feel like Raka is so generally solid as a champion, and everybody thinks that she's so trash, and I don't get it. Like, I understand she's not Sify, she's not Duchess, but in terms of just general utility for most of the player base, you get heals on the A1, you get an AoE cleanse on a 3-turn cooldown that also makes your nukers hit harder, and you also get a shield based on her HP, so you can actually stack for it, and then you get a revive and it block debuffs on the on all allies. So you got a similar situation to like that general utility like Pythion and stuff. And every single time she takes a turn, your allies get a little bit of turn meters. So I don't see how Raka isn't so. And then also you get the all battle speed aura. So like I'm not saying top 10 legendary in the game. I'm just saying underrated and not as trash as people say she is. That's all I'm saying. Because like no one else really stands out to me here in the orcs. I feel like everybody's mostly rated properly here in the orcs. So I guess I'd have to go with Raka in terms of not being as bad as the community perceives her. Then we go to one of the best factions in the game, possibly have the best legendaries in the game. Your Duchess, your Kymar, your Mortu, your Helikath, your Candrafon, Sishia, just so many amazing champions here. You know what? I'm feeling a little bit wild today, as you saw with my Raka pick. I'm going to go with Krutraxa. Similar to some of those other champions I've been talking about in Errol and Turvold, I think you're going to start to see a lot of Krutraxa. We see in the live arena that some of the strategy in meta shifts towards the single target nuking confirming kill DPS champions, and I think you're going to start seeing a little bit more of Krutraxa than you thought you would. She's an absolute unit, has one of the best A1s in terms of dealing damage, similar to like a Candrafon who can do a lot of damage with his A1. This is an absolute truck. The 4-hitter that has a base of ignoring 50% of defense. This A1 can just nuke down people consistently out of nowhere, even if you're getting provoked and stuff like that. That's all right. You block cooldown skills with Warlord, no problem. Krutraxa's still going to run in there and get a kill. So I think you're going to start to see a lot of her in the live arena, granting extra turn and all sorts of craziness that she can do. I actually do have a Krutraxa, so I want to play around with testing her myself, run into the live arena with some damage dealers like, okay, you want to ban my Rotos? No problem. I'm going to go with a Krutraxa, especially if they're using a Warlord or something that's going to be locking me out. At least I can run in there and get some kills with Krutraxa. But not only that, she also has a little bit of self-sustain here and ability to stay in the fight here with this passive to do some self-revive on death. So, yep, I think a champion that's going to start to see a little bit of play and age decently here in 2023 in terms of a champion that has kind of been viewed as trash that could start to see a little bit of play. And similar to the Demon Spawn Undead Hordes, one of the best factions in the game. Underrated. Oof. I feel like, you know, is it Little Miss Annie? Little Miss Annie's play date ability right here can be just it might be one of the hardest hitting abilities in the game. It might be like top 3 for like a single target hardest hitting ability in the game. It could be. So if you want to just completely blow up one thing in live arena or something, it could be Little Miss Annie. You know, so I'll have to kind of test and play around with it. I don't think she'll be like a meta DPS, but that plated ability is pretty crazy. But who would I pick here? I feel like these are mostly, yeah, these are mostly accurately rated. So yeah, I guess you could almost go UDK, but I think most people kind of understand that UDK can fill a really cool role in the game of countering people like a Rotos. So I don't know that he would be the great pick. So in terms of a champion that people think is an absolute trash can, yeah, I guess I'd have to give it to Little Miss Annie for being a little bit underrated here in the Undead. Okay, and just a few more left here. Let's go with the Dark Elves. You know what? It's you know, ASUS can actually counter a few different compositions and be decent. Again, this is an amazing faction. Visix isn't as trash as people think she is. Ghostborn, really good for some of those like speed farming dungeon runs. You know what? I might go with Noct. I think he's a little bit better of a progression support general utility champion than people give him credit for. So again, I feel like one of those factions that people understand the power of. I'd probably go, it's a tough choice on this one as well, but I would probably go with Noct, and he's one that I'm actually lucky enough to have that I haven't been able to play around with as much as I would like. So that is my choice here on the Dark Elves, but admittedly, I'm not rock solid in that opinion, and I could see maybe disagreeing with my pick here because I think there's some other choices. Rule, Blind Seer, there might be a few others that are a little bit underrated. Next up, Night Revenant. Night Revenant's a really interesting faction to kind of talk about the different legendary champions. They've got a lot of like interesting, weird, different kits. A very creative faction. So like this is a pretty tough one. Hegemon would be a decent choice for most overrated, possibly. He's really starting to slide down the meta the last 2 years as the shift happens to more like tanky squads. You know what? I mean, people know how crazy Jorget is, so I obviously don't need to put him on there. So it'd probably be Gaius. You know, this guy is crazy. He can even be an insanely good campaign farmer. He can be just absolutely nuts in terms of placing these bombs and blowing up teams. I do see him a decent amount in the live arena as well. So I guess if you made me pick one here in the Night Revenant, I would go with Gaius. And we are on the final row here. So for dwarves, there's a couple decent choices here in dwarves. I know Nari would be a great pick for something like this in terms of being underrated. Gets used a lot in the Hydra where people struggle. And YSD, you know, credit to him for getting me onto the Nari train. And I've actually been utilizing him a little bit in the Hydra. So he'd be a great pick for something like this. I might go with Joffred. The super annoying passive here where if an ally is killed by a fatal hit, block incoming damage and place block damage on them for 1 turn. Crazy. And I think you're going to start to see him a little bit in live arena as well as we kind of move up the board with being a tanky champion. Really good base stats. He's got 60 between resistance and accuracy, which is super rare, and AoE stun, super reliable. So yeah, I would probably go with Joffred, but I think a lot of people would go with Nari and probably be correct in doing so. Then for the Shadowkin, you know what? I'm probably gonna go. There isn't really anything jumping out the board to me. I think people know the ones that are bad and good. My pick's gonna be Harima. I think people are gonna learn today. Once you start facing Harima in the live arena, this champion is absolutely crazy and is a hard counter to like Mortem Macabre, which is really popular and people love to bring Mortem Macabre. Look at this. Champions from the Demon Spawn faction cannot crit on this champion. So the Demon Spawn have a lot of really good champions. Your Duchess, your Kaimar, your Mortem Macabre, etc. Harima is just an absolute tank and a unit in the context of being a damage dealer, especially somewhere like the arena. So I think people are going to wake up to her being even better than they think she is. And we are on the last faction, the newest one in the game, the Sylvan Watchers. Now, obviously, this is going to be tough. They don't have a lot of champions in here. I'm going to go with King Galkabar as my pick here. He just kind of has a really good tanky kit. Amazing base stats. He's got the 30 and the 45 for the 30 resist, the 45 total between his resistance and accuracy, which is good. Really solid base stats, almost 1300 defense with 21k HP, 108 base speed, and he can do kind of both sides of the buff manipulation. The AoE complete buff strip while also adding poisons and while also placing block buffs. That is really, really good. And then you also get the other side, the cleanse on all allies, and you get a good rotation of a 3-turn cooldown on both, along with a passive where you can kind of activate some of those poisons and continuous heals whenever you are getting attacked under a shield. So I think he's going to be a little bit more fun than people give him credit for, and just a super solid champion in general. So there we go. And in summary, just to run through the quicks really quick here, Lord Champ 4 was the choice in the Banner Lords. The High Elves was Lona Theral. Then on the Sacred Order, the choice was the damage dealer Errol. Barbarians, we went with Contra the Cyclone. Then on the next row, Ogre and Tribes was the new champion Koragar Deathbelt. And then under the Lizardmen, it was a tough one, but we went with Shogger as the Sleep A1 damage dealer. Skinwalkers, it was Mighty Uko for the insane utility and coming up in the live arena and all that. Under the Orcs, it was a hot take, but I went with Raka Viletide. And then on the next row, Demon Spawn. Who was it in Demon Spawn again? It was, oh yeah, Krutraxa, surging at the board with the live arena single target utility. Undeads was similar concept, Little Miss Annie. And then under the Dark Elves was a Noct for the Ally Protector general utility. Night Rev was Gaius the Bomber. And then the last three in the Dwarves, we went with Joffred Blarask Clad. And then Shadowkin, it was Harima for insane cracked DPS in PvP. And then we rounded it out with King Galkabar in the Sylvan Watchers. So there we have it. Thank you to the viewers that had the idea of doing a discussion like this here on the channel. It's always fun to go through and see what some of the more underrated non-meta picks are that are kind of becoming meta and kind of shifting in to having a better perception in the raid community. So let me know down below where you agree, where you disagree. I always enjoy hearing your input as well on videos like this. So that's going to do it for me on this one. I appreciate all of you. Remember to subscribe on your way out. If you enjoy daily Raid Shadow Legends content, I will see you soon in the next video. Peace.